So welcome everybody to the Coaching Crowd Summit 2022. I am here today with Debra Broadhurst, who is a mental fitness coach and mental health first aider, and her session today is all about saying bye-bye to procrastination, something I'm sure that we've all experienced. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy her unique take on procrastination and what to do with it. So over to you, Debra.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see so many happy faces in this Zoom space. Welcome, welcome. I'm just going to, full disclosure, I've had COVID for the last couple of weeks. So if I end up having a bit of a coughing fit, please excuse me, I'll try and limit my germ sharing even in this virtual space. So let me just share my screen because I have a lovely presentation for you. Okay, as we talked about, the conversation that we're going to be having is about bye-bye procrastination. So before we start, I just wanted to share a little bit about me. I am Debra Broadhurst. I'm a mental fitness coach and mental health first aider, and I'm also a mum to two teenage daughters. And prior to becoming a certified mental health first aider and mental fitness coach, I was a childminder for 10 years, graded outstanding by Ofsted. In being a childminder, my main focus was on the supporting and observing of the learning and development of children from birth to 11 years old. And in that 10 years, you learn an awful lot about the learning process from observing children in action. In essence, children have a very singular goal. Is what I'm doing making me happy? And that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure that, I brought into this conversation. Added to this is that they generally have supporting, encouraging environments and time and space to develop and learn, and an expectation that they will learn and development in those right conditions, which their caregivers play an active role in providing. Failure is normalized, met with compassion and encouragement. Failure is part of a process of learning, an opportunity to learn about the world, ourselves, and to reflect on the feedback to hone our skills further. They also might help us to identify what new skills that you might need to acquire, and it's okay to take risks to find out what works and what doesn't. So I became a coach because in the process of becoming an adult, I noticed that there's no one adult above us anymore, specifically championing us. So our need for a supportive and encouraging people and environments, opportunities to reflect, and time and space to develop and learn does not diminish. And for many of us, the stakes are even higher. It's harder to take risks when we have big responsibilities. So we can sometimes lose sight that we are still whole and complete and fully capable human beings with dreams and aspirations that we still want to achieve. And so I became a coach to facilitate that. So by the end of this masterclass, you'll be able to apply what you've learned within it to your life going forward, and it will help you to take action from a place of intention and get in touch with your inner beginner. And it's my hope that because you'll become more aware of what others are going through, you'll be able to support them meaningfully too. You might end up being the encouraging voice that someone else very much needs today. So when we say bye-bye to procrastination, we say hello to greater capacity to counter any feelings of discomfort and then make the progress that you want to make. So the things that we are going to cover. Procrastination, and it's, I've got to just move all your beautiful faces to the other side so that I can read it. Procrastination and its impact. The learning journey that we go on. I'm going to introduce the concept of mental fitness. We're going to dive into conscious incompetence a little bit more, and then I'm going to speak to you about leading with intention. So you're here today because, there's over 59 of you in the group at the moment. You're here today because you've awareness that procrastination is having an impact on your life. and you want to find a solution that either lessens that impact or gives you different outcomes. So let's have a check-in. And what I'd really like you to do is offer in the chat, if procrastination wasn't a problem for you, how might that benefit you and your life going forwards? So what we're getting here, swifter progress. You get so much more done, less chaos, more effective, less time wasting, achieve more, achievements. I would take actions quicker. I get things done in a timely fashion, meaning more time. You'd focus on what matters, sort things out, have a nicer house, keep focused on the most important things, more time to reflect and think. Anything else? Mine wouldn't be full of things I'm not getting around to. Less time not doing things, worrying about things, more time doing things. Clarity. Clarity is coming up quite a lot for people. I love that. So if there's no procrastination, these all are the things that you stand to gain. Feeling satisfied with myself rather than aggravated with myself. I'd be happier. I love that. Just that simplicity of I would be happier. So what is procrastination? You know, we talk about procrastination, but what actually is it? So let's have a quick look. Just give me a second to remove the chat. And my thingamabobby's going a little bit haywire. Just give me a second. Okay, so these are the words that normally get described for procrastination. Dithering, dilly dallying, kicking the can down the road, hesitating, humming and hawing, delaying tactics, stalling. What I want you to just consider at the moment, and you might have your own unique identifiers for and pet names for procrastination, but what I want you to consider at the moment is the tone of these words and what kind of person those words might be describing. Now, you talked about the things that you would like to benefit from if procrastination wasn't an issue for you, and what people describe that procrastination does have an impact on their life in such ways as they experience higher levels of stress, less enjoyment of doing a task, inefficient use of time, lowered self-confidence, and generally feeling unfulfilled and having a negative mindset. And yet, when you actually look at what the definition of procrastination is, it is simply the action of delaying or postponing something. When you take away the judgment about what procrastination is or isn't, you can start to get really curious about why you might be choosing to delay or postpone anything in your life. And that's what we're going to be looking at a little bit further. Okay, so I want to talk about, first of all, the learning journey. So we've got your little baby down at the bottom here, grows into this fully competent human being, you know, doing all of these great things. And some of these things that I'm going to talk about are not in any particular order, but generally speaking, after 10 years of working exclusively with children, I can categorically tell you that there is no such thing in a child's world as procrastination. We are lifelong learners and skill acquirers, and we come into the world with, you know, very basic skills. And over a period of time, we learn how to communicate non-verbally, then verbally, and then through the written words. And then we learn to move and crawl and walk and then skip and run and dance. We learn to read, to ride a bike, sail a boat, some of us. We use a computer, we drive cars, some of us fly planes, we tend to the garden, we exchange our time and energy and know-how for money, we pay our bills, we do our DIY to, you know, positive or negative consequences depending on how skilled you are. We keep houseplants, pets, children alive. We learn skills, and when we've learned a skill, sometimes we keep upgrading those skills, and we take what we've learned in one area of our lives and we apply it and those skills to other areas of our lives. And some skills we get really good at and others not so much. And until the day we die, we are still constantly learning, growing and developing. So one thing that is so closely known and advocated for in our childhood is that learning is a process and we get there in our own time. What I'd like to show you is precisely where I believe procrastination is introduced into that learning process, so that with that awareness, you can make some adjustments to what is a completely reasonable reaction to a precise set of circumstances that are inherent in the way that we are as adults rather than children. So let's talk about the learning process. Some of you will be very familiar with this. So how many of you can drive a car? Quick show of hands for everybody that's on the screen. Most of you, if not all of you, are going to be able to drive a car. Okay. So before you sat in the driving seat, when you watched your parents driving you to band camp or brownies or, you know, to your mate's house or to some party or on holiday, it probably looked quite easy. You know, you didn't have to do the work, and they've been doing it effortlessly for years and years and years, and they made it look easy. But can you remember, and that stage is unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. And other people making stuff look easy, you know, you have no insight as to how hard it actually is to do. So you're unconsciously incompetent. Then you remember, for everybody that's passed their driving test, what it was like the very first time that you sat in the driver's seat and had your first lesson. What were you thinking? For many of us, we're probably feeling quite nervous. There was a lot to do and to remember, and there would have been thoughts and feelings of, I can't do this. You know, I'm overwhelmed. I can't, how do I remember to put all of these things into the right place and also the responsibility of not killing somebody. This feels really, really huge. So that is the stage of being consciously incompetent. Suddenly we become aware of, you know, our own personal skill sets, and that can be incredibly challenging. Then as time went on, how did that change? You know, you were sat in the car and, you know, you could do the driving part of it as long as you were thinking about it. And you're making sure that you were going through maybe checklists in your mind. As long as you were thinking about it, you could do it. And so you start to think, your confidence increases. You start to think, oh, maybe I can do this. And so then you became consciously competent. And now all of you have been driving for some time. What's it like now? It's easy. You've become what your parents were. You don't even think about it. Maybe you've got the radio on and you're talking along with other people. You know, maybe you're, you know, working through a problem in your mind whilst you're driving along. How many times have you, you know, driven on a motorway and just completely have no awareness of how you've managed to do the past 5 miles because you got lost in thought because you are now unconsciously competent. So this is the process. This is the learning process that is universally accepted as true for all the things that we learn to do, all the skills that we acquire. And if we don't use certain skills for long periods of time, or we decide to up the ante and upskill, as in do something with a higher degree of competency, we can move around this process again. And it's not linear. It's not a linear process. We can move forwards and backwards within it. What is inherent in this process is that a gap is created between wanting to do something and then having the skills to do it. And incompetence is defined as not having or showing the necessary skills to do something successfully. And how we handle that, how comfortable we can be whilst we're learning, is going to determine our overall outcome. And it actually requires higher levels of mental fitness to be able to navigate this transition. So mental fitness is defined as the capacity to meet life's challenges with a positive rather than negative mindset. With higher levels of mental fitness, it means that you are less likely to be hijacked by saboteurs. Saboteurs will thrive on the stress that they have created from the lies that they tell you. And saboteurs often get stronger and more prevalent when fear, which they've also created, is present. So if you have low levels of mental fitness, a saboteur hijacking is the likely culprit for people giving up on their goals. And it's something that everyone can resolve for themselves. Much like going to the gym to build up physical fitness, you can learn to build up the core muscles in your brain responsible for creating mental fitness. And you have much greater control in intercepting saboteurs, mastering self-command, and accessing from and operating from what we call a sage response, which is not judgmental, but highly discerning. We all have universally a judge saboteur who will judge ourselves or judge others or judge a situation. And we are especially vulnerable to the judgmental voice of this saboteur, especially if we are aware of our own incompetence, for example, when attempting to master a new skill. Combine that judgmental voice of feelings of inadequacy, low confidence, lack of self-belief, and other negative thoughts and feelings relating to the fear of failure, and you get to meet a selection of other saboteur playmates in varying degrees of intensity. So if you're interested in finding out who your particular active saboteurs are, I will put a link into the comments at the end of this, and after the masterclass you can go and do a quiz and get more information as to which tendencies you're going to actually be dealing with. And if procrastination is a problem for you, then it's very likely that you'll score highly as having an avoider saboteur. So when we look at mental fitness, which is something that I can help and support you on, procrastination tends to be less of an issue. And if it does creep in, you're able to refocus your mind to a place of positivity and positive outcomes, and not drown in any negative energy and negative chatter, which can take you out of action for long periods of time until you get yourself back up to a more positive state of mind. So, apologies, I love this, keeps bopping into different places. So we're going to talk about the consciously incompetent phase, because this is the hotbed of activity for your saboteurs within this learning process. This is the stage where procrastination enters, and unless you can push through any uncomfortable feelings, what starts off as you simply delaying doing something in order to feel better, it can become a problem if you decide you're just going to avoid it altogether. So what I want to do is just look at the reasons why this is such a hot spot to be aware of. The first thing is, let's look at self-judgment versus encouragement. I'll give you an example. When children are learning to walk, what happens when they first start attempting to walk? Pop it in the chat. Young child just learning to walk, what's happening for them? They're falling over. They take a few falls. Absolutely right. And how do now, I want you to put in the chat, how do the adults around them respond when that happens? Encouragement. Encourage. What else? Positive encouragement. Encouragement. Protect. Clapping. Encourage. Praise. Encouragement. Kindness. You get it. So then they fall over. And so what do the adults do? They give them more praise, encouragement, and they reward the trying. I love that, Jamie. Make a video and post it to TikTok. Yeah, one for the album for when they're older. So praise and encouragement to try again, and an overall focus on how well they've done. What adults don't do is criticize or tell them not to bother. They don't stand there and look at the child and go, oh, you little dummy, God, you can't even walk. What's wrong with you? They don't stand there criticizing their capabilities. There's an expectation that they're learning, and that they're going to need some support when they're going through the process of, trying and trying and trying again. And I want you just to think about how much encouragement and praise you actually give yourself as you go through the process of learning new skills. When you're met with feeling inadequate or not having the competency that you want to have, and if receiving encouragement hasn't been our reality growing up, or indeed in our current present reality from others in our life, then we might not actually have an inner dialogue that is particularly supportive. And there's also a change in when you're a very young child. Parents are really super encouraging and praiseworthy, for those big milestones in the early days. But over a period of time, life gets in the way. Children aren't as celebrated, growing up, and especially when they get into teenage years. Think about how the language shifts, and that's where things like this internal voice and these negative patterns start to come to fruition in our minds, because adults aren't always sitting there clapping for us and encouraging us and praising. Sometimes adults are shockingly bad at encouraging us. Sometimes they're very critical or judgmental of us, and we take that on, and that becomes part of our dialogue, so that when we're in a stressful situation, that's what we're also hearing. And we have, as human beings, a negativity bias. I did a course where I was coaching, supporting other coaches for a 6-week period, and every single week they did feedback. And on the very last course, feeling really great about myself that I'd got through this course and done this really great job, there was one negative comment, and I burst into tears, because it really hurt me that was somebody else's comment, and I took that really, really personally. And that happens for people all the time. So we can't rely on other people championing and supporting us. We have to do that for ourselves. And as adults, we still learn the best when others or ourselves are encouraging rather than judgmental and critical. So we actually need to take a step back and stop underestimating the importance of even noticing, let alone celebrating those small wins, and to keep focused on the positive changes that we're making. When there are no adults above us being our champion, unless we champion ourselves, we can get caught up in that negative mind chatter, and that negative mind chatter can become that self-fulfilling prophecy. So we talk about the energy impact of this stage of the learning process. So, you start feeling negative thoughts and feelings creates low energy, and it can low negative thoughts can also be manifested from having low energy. So when we're consciously incompetent and consciously competent, there's a lot of new thinking going on, and there's potentially lots of overthinking going on too, which means that we're expending high levels of mental energy. Now, if you observe children in this learning process, when they're in these zones, they have intense but relatively short periods of active learning and consolidating. And then they go and do something else entirely different that is really energizing for them. And if required, they have a nap, and that's completely, encouraged. So think about how you as an adult deal with these periods of learning. Do you rest? Do you work for shorter spells intensely and then go and do something completely different? And most of us, we don't. And so you call it procrastination and you think you have a problem. But what might be happening is actually your body is expending an awful lot of energy and either needs rest or to be energized in other ways. And so it's also completely normal that when you're feeling low in confidence or feeling inadequate, that you might want to actually go and do something else that you're really good at so that you can bring your energy levels back up before you go and tackle it again. Another aspect that you want to consider when you're in this zone: time. Learning a new skill requires an investment of time that we don't always or can't always give ourselves. As children, we have little in the way of responsibilities, and this is just not true for adults. We have many things competing for our time and energy, and we don't always give the new skill that we're learning the time that it needs. We can get despondent when we don't see results in the time that we have to give, and often we're not patient enough to wait for the results to come. The philosophy that we get there in their own time can be forgotten when we become adults, and we often have unrealistic expectations leading to negative feelings. We have self-imposed pressure, and then eventually we delay or postpone indefinitely, along with the story that defines how we feel about any future learning opportunities. Your compelling why. Having a compelling reason to do anything often carries us through even the most challenging times. Why are you doing what you are doing? What's the payoff for the rest of your life? What is the payoff for other aspects of your life as it is right now? When the going gets tough, it's those that have a really highest good outcome that is pulling them forwards and makes any amount of discomfort worth it. And this becomes the automatic point of focus. Before you can be successful at anything, you need to have a vision, a perspective that it's possible that you can and will succeed. So giving some thought as to what life will be like once you've achieved your goal, what you're now able to do as a result of having that skill or taking that action in the future is going to compel you to keep going. Do you make time to do this? Do you know why you're taking that action? Do you know what need it fulfills, what desire it's bringing to fruition? Priorities. Most people, when we review, as a coach, when I ask people on their priorities as adults, we might realise, as so many do, that we don't prioritise our wants and needs. And most people, when asked who their first priority is, they don't put themselves at the top of that list. And yet when it comes to ensuring you have both the time and energy to do things that you want to do well, you do in fact have to please yourself and create some boundaries so that you can. So we need to be really honest with ourselves about making ourselves, our needs and our wants a priority, so that we don't end up doing all of the stuff and investing all of our time and energy solely in meeting other people's needs and wants. So looking at your priorities is another area that often comes up in this space of the learning journey. Fear of failure. When we really want something to go our way, the fear of failing, not getting that outcome, is something that can come up in this stage of the learning process. Attached to failure is lots of negative feelings and emotions from previous experience, where you experience judgment instead of compassion, from a skewed perspective. Do you know what's happening there, Sarah? So from a very skewed perspective, that failure was a bad thing. I love this feedback.
Just put themselves on mute if you're listening. I think somebody's taken themselves off mute, so it's creating that echo.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for just keeping yourselves on mute. That's really useful. That was exciting. Thank you. Okay, so going back, we have a skewed perspective that failure is a bad thing. And actually, there are many examples of highly successful people who attribute their success to the learnings that they gained in the less than successful outcomes that they've had. So if we can reframe failure as something that can lead to greater success, then we'll be more likely, less likely to fear it. So for many, it's suggested that not failing is indicative that you might not have pushed yourself enough. And certainly in the world of weightlifting, when you push your muscles to fail, that's when the biggest growth can take place. But you know what? Fear is also really understandable, and especially when you have other responsibilities like a mortgage or children or paying bills. But it is and becomes a playground for your saboteurs to become really prolific. So managing fear is a skill that is incredibly useful to learn, and something to really take into account when you're in this stage. Limiting beliefs. This is the final bit that you need to keep in touch with when you're in this particular stage of your learning process. So there is a gap that is created in this stage. You're not sure if you can do something, and feelings of inadequacy can be super uncomfortable and linger a while before you see the evidence that you can. So be aware of any limiting beliefs that start to creep in, which feed off that negative energy. I can't because, I shouldn't because, I'm never going to be able to. I just don't have what it takes. Oh, it's not for me. I can't cope with this. I'm not cut out to do this. Eventually, this negative self-talk can lead you just to stop taking action because you convince yourself that it's just not possible for you. And it's a lie. It is just saboteurs talking, trying to convince you, because you feel deeply uncomfortable and you just want the discomfort to stop. But the reality is you can't make the negativity stop until you've gone through the experience. Leah's saying, have you bugged my house, Debbie? These are all the things I say. Great, because then you know this is reinforcing what you know in your minds. You know, you've got to have the experience, to gain the experience, to learn the skills, to be able to do the things. It's not going to happen overnight. So having this awareness that you're going to get to this particular stage of the learning process and treating yourself with compassion and empathy and understanding and praise and encouragement and a focus on what it is that you're doing really well and what you are doing in a positive light is going to be much more beneficial for you in overcoming procrastination. The moment you start having a dialogue with the negativity, it gets bigger, it gets more pronounced, the saboteurs are having a riot, and it becomes a much, much bigger thing. How many times have you procrastinated about taking action to do something, and then when you eventually showed up to do it, it was no big thing? A lot of the reasons why we procrastinate is because we've built up in our minds something that just isn't our reality. And we have to kind of be aware that this is the stage in the learning process where that happens, and to be proactive about how we're going to deal with that when we get to that stage of our learning journeys. So I believe that just by, hang on, let's close down the chat. Okay, I believe that just by having a greater awareness and understanding of this learning journey, just give me a second, I'm trying to work out how to move this on another thing. I seem to have lost my cursor, which is a bit annoying. Apologies, guys. I'm just finding the next slide. Okay, so I believe that just having a greater understanding and a greater awareness of this learning process, you can reduce, if not eliminate, procrastination, because we can decide ahead of time how we want to be in each of these stages in order to achieve the very best outcomes. So I'd like to invite you to start thinking about leading with intention when it comes to taking action. When we're in the unconsciously incompetent stage, we can recognize that other people serve as an inspiration. So like our parents driving the car, inspire other people driving their car, other people going on holidays, driving their cars, other people driving their cars fast, other people driving really nice cars. You know, we can become really inspired by the actions of other people, and it can help us to see what is possible for us. But we don't need to do all of the things. We can simply enjoy being inspired by somebody else and just leave it there. Our time is the most valuable resource. So before we decide to invest our time and energy into taking any action, being crystal clear on how taking that action fits into your life goals and prioritizing the actions that will move you towards achieving the outcome you want, well, it will serve you well if we become more discerning about what we choose to do and give ourselves permission to perhaps say no to some things. So when we say no to doing some things that do not serve us or do not help us achieve our goals or meet our outcomes, it gives us actually the time and space and energy to be able to do the things that actually are going to serve our life purpose. So if you haven't given any time to creating a compelling why, this is the stage to create that. The energy of inspiration and possibility and excitement can be used to your advantage. Lead with the intention of taking action will help you achieve your goals and help you to be really clear on what it is that you want to achieve. And it will help you to become really selective about what actions to take. In the consciously incompetent stage, so in taking action, in taking any action, we have decided that ultimately, in the doing of that action, our life will be improved in some way, and we want that. So in essence, the action that you're planning to take is already worthwhile, and you deserve to experience the benefits of it. So in this stage, the stuff that you're not skilled at is going to make itself known, and it will likely impact our confidence. And we've talked about a variety of things that may exacerbate any negative feelings. But instead of focusing on how our life will be greatly improved, instead of focusing on the negatives, when we focus on how our life will be improved and the positive feelings associated with that, we can get pulled towards positive feelings. But if we don't focus on those positivities and what's going well, we will get pulled into negative feelings. And if we're increasing our mental fitness, that can help us to bring our focus back to the positive. So how are you going to be towards yourself during this time? What's your strategy for overcoming challenges? How will you bring into focus what is going well? Will you meet yourself with compassion and support and encouragement? Will you choose not to give up, but instead to hold on to the vision that you've set yourself? When you lead with intention, you can decide this ahead of time. You can decide to be a champion of that inner beginner, and you can set your own markers for success. And then you can recognize that self-confidence comes from us closing that gap and transforming the I can't into I can and I am. In the consciously competent stage, recognize and celebrate the bits that you're doing well. The energy of praise and enthusiasm will permeate into all aspects of your life on that learning journey. There was a time when you couldn't do what you're now doing really well. So celebrate yourself. Take a moment to appreciate who you are and that you overcame so many challenges, even to this day. Lean into that confidence. If you can do this, what else might you be able to do? Start to inspire yourself and other people. And in the unconsciously competent stage, enjoy it. You've worked hard to get to the stage where, you don't even have to think about this action. Enjoy that and feed off the energy of the appreciation and celebration of yourself, because you have learned not just one skill in doing an action, but multiple skills which are transferable to lots of other areas of your life that we often take for granted and sometimes wait for other people to point them out. So don't wait for other people to tell you how well you're doing or how awesome you are. Start recognizing, all of the skill sets that you've got and celebrate them, and help other people to have those skills too. Most of all, I want to leave you with this thought today. Remember the motivation of the child. And we heard it in Ian's question and answer session on the previous session. The action that children take is simply because they want to be happy. So the action you are deciding to take is because you believe that it will contribute to your ongoing happiness. And when you delay or postpone the action, you're also delaying the happiness. So can you give yourself permission to be happy? Because you definitely deserve to be happy. So what's the one thing that you can do right now that will contribute to your happiness? So if you want to create a more compelling why, then my free download called Time to Bloom may be of service to you. You can use these lovely little zappy things, the QR codes, to get a straight link to it. One of the things that I do in there is to give you steps to create a more amazing life. And part of that is helping you get really clear on what you want and need to achieve in the remaining years that you've got on this planet Earth. Okay, so if that's calling to you, that's a free download that you can utilize. You can also join my Well community, which is a free Facebook group where I support you to be and do well in life, and we can keep a conversation going in there with anything that's coming up for you. And I'm also a big fan of LinkedIn, so you can connect with me there too. And finally, you've heard me talk about mental fitness. I'm a mental fitness coach and I absolutely love it. It has completely changed my life. When you can be in a negative situation and still be able to have a positive mindset about it and shift out of a space of negativity really, really quickly, it has incredible positive effects on your life. So I run a 6-week program that can help you to increase your mental fitness, to improve your performance, your relationships, and increase your overall happiness and well-being. So if you'd like to speak to me about that, then just send me an email at action@debrabroadhurst.co.uk. And when I've got availability to take on more people, then I can let you know. I am planning on doing a masterclass on mental fitness in August, so you can certainly come along to that and hear more about whether or not that would be a good fit for you going forwards. So any questions? I shall stop sharing so I can see all your beautiful faces.
Thank you so much, Debbie. That was great. Sarah, have you got your hand up there? Sarah Reader?
Sarah's had her hand up since I asked a question earlier on. She was one of her reactions. Okay, so has anybody got any questions about mental fitness or procrastination or anything that they've heard that they still want some reassurance on? I am happy to answer. We've probably got a couple of minutes, so I'm happy to answer anything. Sarah's waving her fan. It's a warm day, isn't it? Fantastic. Well, over to you, Zoe.
Some lovely feedback for you there, Deborah. And it was great to see how you applied that conscious competence ladder to overcoming procrastination, and were drawing on all of your knowledge, skills and experience as a childminder and what you observed in children, and how we develop and perhaps create some some more limiting beliefs around us as we go through life, and what you can do in the here and now to actually break through procrastination and understanding the triggers for it showing up. I'm going to stop the recording now.